items?
Yeah, that's correct. We've had a lot of staff discussion on the CIP because the council knows from our previous budget adoption that if one of our ongoing projects is to change the format of the CIP to make it more understandable to the general public. That's a project that we began last year, but the person in charge of it then retired. It's also going to be a goal of this year. In fact, tomorrow at staff meeting, we are already taking a look at a new format, potentially a new format for the CIP. The issue with the CIP is it's all over the place in terms of whether these projects are funded or proposed. If funded, where's the source of the money? It's not just one account that all works internally that you can add up at the bottom. It's basically to show you the magnitude of public projects which have been proposed, some of which have been approved, some of which have not been approved, some of which may not be approved. So the council has asked for information on this, so it's supplied to you. But as far as its usefulness is at this point in time in a mid-year budget adjustment, it's a very limited use other than to show you the magnitude of the projects that are under consideration.
You know, just as a point of, might make it a little more clear, would be if we could have the projects that are actually have been approved for funding in one color and the projects that haven't been approved in another color, and then we wouldn't be as confused.
That is one of our goals to do that. In fact, we have as a model of what we want our CIP to look like, one that the public will be able to turn to on a website and look at it and understand the general theory. These are funded, these aren't, these may not be, etc. So the public can look at that and say, this is coming, this is something I like and I wish it would be coming, this is something for the future, etc. And those things will be clear. We just have not managed to achieve that due to our staffing limitations. As I mentioned, the retirement of the person whose basic responsibility was the redoing of the CIP.
And thus, that is why we need an additional helper in the accounting department.
See how that all just goes around in circles?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And we need more money for roads and everything.
So the one that that I'm kind of confused about is the 200,000 that's listed, project cost, which is bike lanes and Santa Rosa 116 construction is 200,000. But it's listed as project cost, but then in the total, it's listed as a zero.
So let me clarify on the 15-16 column for the traffic impact fee fund. Originally, if you look in the budget book under the CIP tab, all these projects that listed here are in that 5-year CIP plan.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, council did approve these projects at June in 2015. The city did not receive the grant funding that was the local match of the $200,000. So with that amount that we did not receive the funding for that grant, it was decided, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would get split up and used for the local street engineering design costs, then the gateway sign, speed control, and multi-use of trail physical study. So that $200,000 is being split up in this 5 or 4 different projects.
There's not been final approval of that yet.
Okay, because I don't remember approving some.
No, it's not approval, it's just on this list.
Okay.
Those are good examples of an item where we put figures in, that as the finance director indicated, those haven't been approved yet. They are essentially where the money could go and what it could be used for is what you're seeing in this point in time for our CIP between last year's budget adjustment, June 30 of 15, and next year's budget adjustment of June 30 of this year. That's where we are with the CIP at this point in time. But each of those items either has come to the council before or will come to the council for specific approval and decision.
I guess I'm just being really dense. I just don't get why the 200,000 isn't part of the list.
Yeah.
It is part of the list. It just taken the amount and split up in those projects. But the $200,000 for the local match is part of this list. But because we didn't receive that grant, it's being used for other purposes or proposed to be used for other purposes.
And it is in the Budget Committee, Subcommittee worksheet, page 7 of your packet. It's listed down there as the MTC grant on line 14. It's listed down there on the feasibility study on line 22. These are proposals that will be coming back to the council in the future, but that's where they are present.
But I don't want to take up everybody's time because they're going crazy, but I don't get where, I thought that this $200,000 project is something that is one of our proposed projects. And so if we were going to look at the total amount we would be spending over the next 5 years, that is a proposed project, and so it should be part of this total. I guess that's what I don't, that bike lanes on 116 is just another project that we didn't get funding for.
Right, if you look on page 22, it's suggesting that the 200,000 be divided up in that way. Look at the little boxes, A, B, C, D, and all that.
Yeah, I get that, because we wanted, but that 200,000 was going to go to a project that we did not get. So are we now saying we're not gonna do that project? Because is that, you see what I'm saying?
Is that what this spreadsheet indicates?
We are going to do that project with an application of a different grant where there's going to be a 10% local match.
I guess another way to phrase that is we're still trying to do the project.
Uh-huh.
The council can direct otherwise. These items are returning to the council. We've been directed to complete the engineering for one of the grants we've applied for, to do the engineering for another one. We're bringing back a feasibility study for the trails, et cetera. These items are returning to the council for decision. They're here because we are doing a mid-year budget adjustment. This is an attempt to give the council a snapshot where these potential monies are moving from where they were to where they may go. This is the difficulty of doing this mid-year instead of in the regular budget cycle. So this is, we must bring you the complete picture, but more properly, these are going to be dealt with as the council takes these items up as specific agenda items and/or completes the 16-17 budget in June of this year. And that's a whole involved series of, everyone knows, of intensive meetings, a lot of analysis. This is a mid-year snapshot because we were directed to bring back specific items. Therefore, we need to tell the council where we are with the budget as of this moment to fund or not fund these specific items we were told to bring back. And in order to give you a complete picture, we're giving you all the rest of this information, but this is really midstream. And so there's really no decision point, I don't believe, in the council this evening for those items other than the ones we specifically identified as being either directed to bring back at this meeting or proposing to you this evening for decision this evening.
Okay, I think I'm beginning to get what happened to the 200,000, but thank you. And actually, the whole notion of doing this thing with the beginning fund balance and then what the end is was really helpful. So don't think I'm being critical, because I think this is really helpful to see what we're spending over a 5-year period. But what's a little confusing is that we have decided to do some of the projects and haven't decided to do other ones, and then it makes my brain get confused.
That's the overall problem with our CIP, which is why
Right,
it can be a challenge to understand.
yeah,
Our overall problem is we don't have all the money we want.
that's the
That
overall.
would definitely-
And Councilmember Jago has a question, and then I have one, before we move to public comment.
I hope I'm not being negative. So, do we have $118,213, or do we have $318,213, and you guys have already reallocated that $200,000 in this CIP section?
The $200,000 comes from traffic impact funds, and so it's not available for these general fund items that are before you this evening. we have given the placeholding position where you see it in the CIP.
So the $200,000 is only available for traffic impact items, but items on this budget subcommittee worksheet are traffic impact specific. And then I believe that some of the items on this worksheet are already funded in that $200,000 CIP. So it's showing here as green to be brought back, but we've already funded it.
We have not funded it, we just put it on the list so that council can see these are the items that could be potentially funded with traffic impact fee.
So there's an additional $200,000 in the traffic impact fund that we can spend on issues related to the traffic impact fund.
The item that was originally was supposed to be the local match of the $200,000.
So that local match is $200,000, but now we're going to do a 10% match, which only costs us $100,000?
That was my understanding.
So if we wanted to maintain our ability to have that match fund, we would retain the $100,000
Yes,
for that,
yes,
and then we would have an additional $100,000 in the traffic impact fund because of that reduction.
yes.
Okay, thank you for helping me understand.
Okay, that's what happened to the two. So here's my question, again on page 23. You see all the stuff that's in red there?
Yes.
Now, these are, I think, new items. And there is a number here, crosswalk improvements, Bodega and Nelson. Okay, no funding identified, and it has about a 51,696 number.
Mhm.
What does that amount get? Is that the blinking crosswalk with the overhanging sign? What does that amount mean? I don't know what that amount means related to that item.
I think at the last council meeting, I believe the Public Works Director had looked at the average cost of the street smart improvements, and they were substantially more than $50,000.
I know, that's why I was surprised to see it so low.
So I'm not sure what that, I think that's a number that may have been in the CIP for some time. I don't know that we know exactly what that was about.
So it doesn't mean a street smart crosswalk at that number. It doesn't mean a stoplight at that number. We don't know how little that buys us, because it strikes me as a really low number. City attorney,
Well, again, this
manager?
We apologize for any confusion caused by this. We wanted to bring you the CIP in its current form. These figures are not set yet. They have to be set either by a specific agenda item approving the item, or at the time of 16, 17 budget adjustment this June. This is where these items are presently in the CIP. It's not been our project at this point in time to try and revamp the CIP. That's a project that is returning with the regular 16-17 budget.
Okay, and we believe that particular item will come back as its own agenda item in a future meeting with some staff workup on potential solutions and costs. So right now, that number is not really meaningful unless Councilmember Slater can find it in the CIP.
Let's just
But
listed here as the same number.
There are some CIP items on this.
Right.
But it's a separate conversation than I think we're having tonight.
Right, okay,
Can I add one more question?
okay.
So earlier you said for the finance position, it was $5,000 or $10,000 for the rest of the year.
Yes.
What numbers should we use tonight for budgeting purposes?
So what number you should use tonight is to approve the $20,000, 150, if my memory serves me right, for the finance department, to have that budget increase.
But that's the amount for the total,
But that's the amount for the total, so when everything is all said and done and rolled up, general fund will get its portion, which is 5,000, and the rest will be split between water and sewer.
The issue is that you've given us $118,213 general fund surplus.
Yes,
So in order for us to make decisions tonight about how we're gonna allocate those dollars,
yes,
I need to understand what budgetary number we need to use against the $118,213.
for the finance position, it's $5,000.
Okay, thank you.
For the remainder of this fiscal year,
For the remainder of this
however,
fiscal year.
It is intended to express a commitment to that position continuing into next fiscal year. That's what
Yes.
the city manager said. Okay, let us take a break right now from asking questions and see if anybody from the public would like to comment on this particular item, number 7, our mid-year budget. Come forward, please. Yeah, welcome.
Sister, Bodega Avenue. I have a couple of questions here. When we originally did, when you folks originally did the budget back when, we talked about a position that would cover our city clerk, our manager, and our finance person. I can see our finance persons being taken care of, and I can see our managers being taken care of. But I am concerned that our city clerk may be deferring and may not be getting her needs met, but it may be included in the other things. And those are the things I don't know. And that's my concern, because I know how those things get done. Somebody generally defers, and I would like to see that not happen. 2, we talked about an economic development person. And now I know I need to get educated on this piece, the Pine Grove something or another, and the vagueness that I get on it is about relocating or something. And I will get myself educated. But my concern is, we talked about that this town needs to generate money, okay? And that's what I was hoping that position would begin to cover. I know tonight Larry said that many of the functions would be covered through the position for the finance person, for the Pine Grove piece. But I'm wondering if we're really understanding, and I know you really know, okay, please, I understand that. But I'm just afraid that's going to get washed away, okay? And then you mentioned the thing of digital, and I don't understand what digital means for a stoplight. Let me be very, very clear. Whatever we put in Bodega Avenue and Nelson needs to be a real stoplight. And we have talked about it extensively where we live. Remember, this is human beings that have been affected where we live. For you, it's just theory and concept. We want a real stoplight. And I know that, from what I'm understanding, evidently that's rather costly. But I just really want to reiterate, please get us a stoplight, and I'll get myself educated, but please get us money, or set it up so that the town can begin to generate money, so we don't have to have things like that hotel going in the lumberyard. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Glad to have those comments. Would anybody else like to comment? Here we go. Seeing no one come forward, oops. Then I'll bring this back to the council. I'm wondering, to our city manager, could you make this really simple for us, what the task ahead is? Rather than have me say what I think it is, which could be wrong. Okay? So we have the budget subcommittee worksheet.
Well, one of the things we would like to ask you to do this evening is make decisions about the general fund impacting items which are new to you this evening. The request for a shared full-time employee for finance, the item on the second page of the needs assessment sheet relating to the Pine Grove project, the request from the community center for the flooring upgrade. And I might add on that one that Diana Rich is here, and she has also supplied information that's part of the staff report this evening on that particular item, and she could address any questions you have on it. Those are items that we specifically would like a decision from the council this evening to go forward or not with those items. The other would be a decision on the annual transfer out to the street payment reserve fund, which is on page 2 of the needs assessment list. Item number 35, we've discussed that previously this evening. Generally, that transfer takes place on June 30th with regular budget adoption. It was proposed to partially transfer that at this time mid-year. So the items we would specifically like a decision for would be item 35, transfer monies, item 34, Pine Grove project, item 31, the flooring upgrade item, and item number 7, the full-time employee for the engineering department proposal. We also propose to use $15,000, item 11, for the traffic digital signs. This is a specific item that's been developed, so the police chief can provide some further information for if you have that question. The other items, not proposed for decision this evening. Correct.
That's right.
Councilmember Jacob?
Thanks for bringing us back. I have to say that I'm most concerned around losing the economic development position for the postponing that position for the development of publicly owned land in a public-private partnership. I think the Pine Grove item is of great importance, but I also don't want to give up the economic development opportunity. I would suggest that we, I'm only referring to the $118,000 and assuming that we will wait on the traffic impact items and that $200,000 for a future discussion. Is that safe to assume? Well, that's how I'm gonna come at it. That $200,000 will be outside of this. So out of the $118,000, $213,000, I would suggest that we fund, this is general fund dollars, $5,000 towards the finance position, which is item 7. $15,000, which is item 11, for the Batega Traffic Control Reserve. I think we should put a set of money into reserve account. And I know that Councilman Slater said he wanted to bring this back to council as well. But maybe and then we have that other $50,000 that we saw in the CIP that could be added to it later. But maybe at this point, we just need to start putting a reserve together to start having a discussion, to have the funds available to implement projects after we get a more holistic review of it. So I would suggest $15,000, item number 11, to become a reserve account versus specific traffic control measures. Funding item 31 at $10,000 for the community center flooring, and remembering that the community center gave us back $17,000, and then is spending 10 for a net gain of 7 on the city's part. Is that correct?
No, the $17,000 reduction that you see there reflects IVE's pool changes.
Right.
The community center zeroes out. 10,000 from the kitchen remodel fund to fund 10,000 of the flooring.
So it's just moving the purpose of the money, it's not actually spending an additional 10,000
Yeah.
you're asking.
Correct.
Okay.
And then $30,000 for the Pine Grove project, which I believe I heard a number of 30,000 or less is the actual number. And then $30,000 to fund an economic development coordinator for half a year. That totals $90,000, leaving a balance of $28,213. And I'd ask that we be even more conservative, and rather than apply it to next year's street reserve, we take that $28,000 and just add it to our current general reserve. That would be $28,213. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items would total $118,213.
Thank you, that's a really helpful, organized way to look at it, and I encourage each council member to say their priorities, Vice Mayor Glass.
Well, I just wanted to ask the city manager and our finance director, was page 6, which is department needs assessment list, that sort of encapsulated a lot of those things that Councilmember Jacob just said. Was that really was your intention that we visit those specific items first? Is that why you put that list together? Or were you thinking we should go more off the worksheet?
Page
We have page
6 is the explanation for the items that I was attempting to summarize earlier, is the ones that need a decision point this evening, and that's the explanation for those items. We brought back the entire needs assessment list from last June 30th, including color coding, the ones that we were asked to bring back specifically. The rest of those items are informational only. There's a list from last June 30th.
So item A of that list, which is item 8, is not proposed, right? Which is item 8 on the.
Correct.
That's
That's
correct.
correct.
That was,
Because I had my own little arithmetic thing, and now my arithmetic's messed up. Item 33 and 30, item B, which is items 33 and 34, that is the economic development position as discussed, and so now we are saying that is 30,000 we would spend this year.
That's what council,
That's what Councilmember
Member
Jacob
Jacob
is
is
We only have a
suggesting.
half a year left.
And then we would have, the other half would be in another fiscal year. Is that correct? And then, on the finance director item, which is item C, also known as item 7. So what I had in my list was 20,150, but a portion of that is out of the water fund and a portion of that is out of the
General
general fund.
yes.
So is the 20,150 the right number for those two funds?
The 20,000 is right for all 3 funds, general
Okay.
fund, water and sewer.
Okay, water and sewer are
Yes,
separate funds?
yes.
Okay, and then, item D, which is items 11, 13, 14, 22, and 31, are new items that were added by staff. One of those is, has a 0 net change, which is the community center item. And I won't talk about the rest of those yet. And then there was the transfer thing, which is $50,000, so you're looking for that transfer, so to approve the transfer from one fund to another.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm beginning to add these up. So then so these are the ones that were, this is all the stuff that staff was suggesting that we go through this evening, is on page 6.
can you give us the numbers you just assigned to those real quickly? A through E?
Okay, so item A is 0,
Right. Okay.
item B is 30,000. Item C is 20,150, but it's coming out of 3 different funds. And item C is a $50,000 transfer. And item D, one of those items is a 0 net, but then it seems to me that the other items are the ones that really are the ones that are up for question.
May I make a comment that is relevant to the
Diane, if you'd like to come up to the mic, that would be helpful, because we can have you recorded.
Yeah.
This is for the flooring for the community center.
Diana Richmond, Sebastopol Community Cultural Center. As I look at your numbers, Anna, I see that the adjustment that's shown here for the community center is actually an additional $10,000 to the budget. And it strikes me that shouldn't that be 0? Aren't we just transferring money from one fund, which is the kitchen fund?
We're just you're correct. It's
Should that be
the
0?
net 0, it's a net 0 effect.
Right.
Just the amount that was earmarked for the kitchen is now being reallocated for the floor.
It
So
was
my-
not understood at the time that this first came to the budget committee that there would be that offset.
My point is
See,
that
it's 10,000 new money.
My point is that if you're looking at the 118,000 as money you can allocate, it strikes me that 10,000 doesn't need to go to the floor.
10,000 is zero.
Right.
So, yep, my
The
point.
additional 10,000 is in the 118 now.
There is no additional.
No, there's no
10.
additional 10.
No.
Okay, so what Diana's trading, let me make sure I get it, is a kitchen remodel for a new
Yes.
floor.
I
She
just
got
want
the
to
new
make,
floor.
yes, I just want to make sure that there's an additional $10,000 that's available to you that has not been taken into consideration because it's just a transfer of funds.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the 10,000 is not an additional from that 118 of fund balance. It's in that 115, 18, excuse me. It's in there.
Right.
So when the community center gave back $17,000, that's part of the 118,000
Yes.
that's available.
Yes.
So if we fund the floor, we have to deduct 10,000 from the 118,000.
No, because it's already in
It's
there.
already in there. We're just moving it from
We
one
just
purpose to
move,
another.
we just move from one bucket to the other.
Okay.
We're amateur financial people here. This is hard. And this is the most detailed work we have ever done on a budget. I just have to commend all of you, you don't think so? We do this every time. We do this every
I
time.
would characterize it, if I could, as a level of detail is what is normally done at yearly budget time after 3 months of budget subcommittee meetings and one-on-one meetings with finance department and city staff. This had to be done a different way, which was much more abbreviated. The budget committee only had a couple of meetings, not the normal amount of review that would take place at the yearly.
So, to our city manager, while you're at the mic, would you be interested in addressing the comment about how we had talked about admin help for you and our city clerk as well, and how this particularly addresses concern from the public as to our city clerk and make sure workloads are shared or changed in some way?
I'd like the city clerk, if she could, to address part of this from her own perspective. From my perspective, the kind of assistance that would really help our city clerk is of a high level and expensive. It has to do with preparation of minutes, preparation of a lot of city clerk type items that take a high level. Having somebody who is shared between the 3 departments, on the other hand, was anticipated to be somebody who primarily answered the phone and would meet and greet the public who come into the lobby to pay their water bills. That's a much lower and less expensive kind of position, which may not have been that much assistance to the city clerk and as a practical matter. So this is a completely different idea about bringing a higher level person to the finance department. Admittedly, it provides no assistance really to our city clerk, but at this point in time, we don't believe we can afford that level of assistance. And I'll let the city clerk address whatever I said wrong. I said right.
Okay, so that remains a historical discussion and I think is placed somewhere on the wish list, although it's not coming forward in this particular mid-year budget discussion. Perhaps the next budget or later. Okay, so,
I was going to say, it's my assessment as city manager is on scene each and every day over there that if we can only fund one of them, I do agree that we would be funding the finance department full-time employee request is what is really needed to address that right now. We don't have the redundancy we need in our finance department when we rely on the finance director doing lower level tasks and have only one truly experienced employee helping her. We need to get away from that. We've had a problem of finding competent people who were up to the task and wanted to stay. So it's been a challenge to get that level of assistance in the finance department. So we're hoping that if you approve that this evening, we'll be able to find that person. But that's where I think the most crucial #1 need is right this minute.
okay. Other council members ready with priorities?
Sure.
Ready? Council members Slater?
finance position for the general fund portion of that, $5,000. I agree with Councilmember Jacob about the line item 7 for the traffic lights on the Dega, and seeing as we'll be discussing that in the future, I think putting a $15,000 reserve makes good sense on that item, because if we decide to do something else, then we already have some money set aside. If we don't decide to do something else, then we're ready to move forward with the previously discussed and approved item. Line item number 34, which is the Pine Grove Square consultant, I'd like to see $35,000 committed to that. And I've been, for years, pounding the nail of economic development coordinator, and I still see a need for that. However, the Pine Grove Square project, as the memo states, there is a fairly significant overlap in a portion of that work. It's certainly not the same position, but something that is baseline knowledge that we don't have is an assessment of what properties and potential development on those properties in our downtown. So that is part of the analysis that is part of the Pine Grove Square proposal. So there is overlap in that, and I'm not comfortable letting the economic development coordinator position slide a little bit time-wise. We still definitely need to do that, but this is getting at least some of that work done in addition to a whole lot of other work that will have great benefit economically in our town. So those three items, $5,000, $15,000, and $35,000, total $55,000. I'd like to do the $50,000 transfer to the streets reserve. That brings us up to $105,000. And then I'd like to put the remaining $13,000 to the general fund reserve, which coincidentally is right around 10% of that figure that we've been working off of as our total, which has a nice round ring to it for me.
Okay, anybody else ready? I could go forward while you're thinking, Vice Mayor? You good?
I just wanted to say one thing about the economic development, the value of the Pine Grove Square Consulting, and thinking that it makes sense because the work product of that consultant is going to be a basis for continuing on with further economic development work. So it makes sense to me, I'm saying this partly for the public, it makes sense to me to have them engage in that kind of work, which is collecting a lot of information and putting and munching and crunching some numbers and creating a presentation that can be to invite redevelopment of that particular area of our downtown. And getting that information together, and then that information would be available to an economic development coordinator in the future. So having two different people at the same time working on that would not be as functional, I would think, as starting out with somebody collecting that information and using that as something to build on for future economic development. And I think there's someone that wants to tell me something.
I just also think, building on that, I should point out that we are ready to go, basically, with retention of the Pine Grove Square consultant. We are not ready to go with respect to the Economic Development Coordinator. So I don't know how much we could even achieve the remainder of this fiscal year for Economic Development person, because we haven't even completed the job description yet, although it has come to the council one time. We don't have a process in place to recruit such a person. It's more than just devoting money to it. There's a whole process we have to go through with respect to that particular position, whereas we're ready to hit the ground running now with respect to the Pine Grove consultant.
So, what I see is we have in our future a couple new positions, and we don't know exactly now which ones they would be. So the notion is to look for an additional person in the finance department to notch it up to administrative services. That's a hire temporary, hopefully for a real hire. But we don't know how that's gonna work out. It could wash out and, so we won't know until we get to this next year's budget. We continue this conversation about a dedicated person that will assist our city manager and city clerk. That's been tabled, but it's still an idea that we hold on to. And we've talked about the economic development specialist, but a lot of that work has been moved into the Pine Grove Square consultant, which will help us understand what potential work that position could do because of so many overlapping. So in that case, we can assist finance, we can get a feel for what an economic development specialist might do, meanwhile working on something really practical. So I'm in favor of both of those items. If it's a $5,000 commitment to finance, that just sounds low to me, but that's general fund money. So for Pine Grove Square, I would like to see that also at 35. We're not sure that the person will, that her work will be, what do you say, loaded up front so that it would take all of that amount, or if that amount would move into the second 3 months. We're looking at a potential 6-month project there, 6 to 8 months. So if that is done, then we have experience and we're freeing up. We haven't captured future money that continues through the whole year next year. And for me, I'm not comfortable making the bodega traffic monies go into a reserve that isn't specifically dedicated to anything. We need a detailed report on what the possibilities are at Nelson and Bodega in the context of that entire road. We also need to know what each solution might cost. We are, I think, weeks away from considering that, and we need to make a decision tonight, and I think we've already had a previous agenda item committing, I thought it was something closer to 13,000 to those speed lights. They have a name, I always forget. So for me, I don't want to put that money into some general reserve until we get some answers to this big, long time problem. Those answers could take us 6 months. They could take us a while. And getting money for that could take even longer. So I think it's important to put that money on the street right now with the commitment this evening to help reduce speeds. The placement of that is likely to also be visible from the sidewalk, the crossing at Nelson in Bodega too, so it potentially has some safety effect there. I think the community center floor for kitchen, we're all good there. And for me, I think it's really important if the budget subcommittee on his original proposal was to put the 50,000 in now, I think that's the conservative approach to, that's to the street reserve, because if we do it now, then it's in there. And if we wait, we may find many other things that we want to dip into that money for. So I would just fund those, and then that's the 5,000, the 15,000, which I think is closer to 13,000 potentially, and Pine Grove Square at 35, and make sure we do the streets money and put the rest aside to general reserve, and know that we have made some commitment to the general reserves. I think that's very similar to what you just proposed too, right? Except that I want the speed thing on Bodega. I don't want to do some reserve. 15,000 in a reserve there isn't going to get much action on that street. It's going to have to wait for that reserve to be built up and built up and built up. Whereas if we spend the 13,000 now, we know we've affirmatively done something to reduce speed on that road. Yeah.
Related directly to that.
Okay. Are you asking me this question?
I'm
or-
asking the chief.
Good.
If we move forward with the purchase of those speed flashers, and then in 7 months, when we have a remarkable windfall from the Powerball, we decide we're going to put a stoplight in there, can those be relocated somewhere else with relative ease?
I would give you two answers. Yes, I think they can be. And I think that they might need to stay where they're at, even with the signal. I mean, I still think you're gonna have issues closer to Parkside School. It would in essence be a reminder between Bodega and Nelson and Bodega and Jewel where there's a signal.
Okay.
So that would be, yes, it could be moved to some other place if it's no longer needed, but my estimation is it probably would still be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments? Vice Mayor?
Actually, just for the information for the public and for myself, so how much does a traffic light cost?
You mean a
A
stoplight?
stoplight?
I have no idea. That's more of a Henry question potentially.
That's what I.
How much?
$150,000.
$150, yeah.
Because I thought the street smart crosswalks cost closer to 200,000.
Without all the sidewalks and other public improvements.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that, who was answering, sorry. There's sort of voice in the crowd, okay. Not me, okay.
I've heard
So,
a much higher
I've
number
heard
than
much
that, so
higher.
I would be cautious this evening. We
Right.
don't want to shoot in the dark on that one. Traffic signals are quite expensive, shocking to me.
Uh-huh.
I
Rich,
just
did
wanted
you
to
want to
mention
add?
that I was talking over the last week or so with one of the Burbank Heights folks about the repairs to that apparatus that's up there now.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd asked a question, and I looked up the last Street Smart project we did, phase 3, and the average cost of the lighted crosswalks in 2009 was $155,000. So I think a traffic signal would be quite a bit more.
So in 2009, that's what we call, what do you call them, street smart crosswalk?
A typical Street Smart crosswalk is about $155,000.
155,
The last phase that we actually did.
right. And that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago? Okay,
So just wanted to give you that perspective.
okay. Vice Mayor?
And just, is there any kind of fund grant fund that Caltrans might provide? Because that's Caltrans Road, isn't it?
No,
Oh, it's not. Oh, okay.
Caltrans ends of the main
Yeah, sorry.
intersection.
Can't
the
blame it
highway.
on them, darn. Okay, yeah.
Whatever we do, it's on us.
Right.
No grant monies for a particularly dangerous location.
No, but the bottom line is Caltrans put in a flashing light on 116 for Birdcrest Mobile Home Park, an elderly public crossing to the market. So we have the same thing, and it's our road, I think it's our responsibility. Either of you want to
Yeah,
identify
I just
priorities,
was
then we'll
just
kind of
curious
go
if the 15,000, I need to have my memory refreshed, the $15,000 for the digital speed reminder signs, that's enough money to cover the 3 that were discussed? Two.
Two.
Oh, okay, 2, okay. Yeah, well, I guess my comment would be, I'd like to see those move forward as quickly as possible. And so, in that regard, we've had like at least three proposals of how to divvy up the pie here, but
Mhm.
however it sorts out, shakes out, I'd like to see that move forward and not be put into a reserve status.
Okay, are there other priorities that you wanted to talk
No,
about?
I think,
Because then we'll just take
you
them
can
one
move
at
the
a time.
numbers all around all you want, but no, I'm in agreement with the other ways. I just didn't want to see that one language.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor, do you want to list any priorities? And then I think what we're going to have to do is kind of vote them through one at a time, maybe. I don't know what else to do.
Okay, well, I think I'm in agreement. See, I'm not seeing that much difference in what everybody's saying, but maybe I'm confused. So, 5,000 towards the staff person for finance, 15,000 approximately for the digital flashers, 35,000 towards the Pine Grove Economic Development person. 50,000 goes into the street paving reserve, and then we're still left with our $13,000 general fund, yeah, which council members later suggested we move to a general fund reserve, which, since that reserve is sitting there, that means you can always unreserve it. Right?
Or you
If it's
can
needed.
building it. So that's good. I think there's a motion available. Councilmember Slater
yes, I
asked,
will.
maybe?
I will move that we talk about this further out. Oh, wait a minute. I move that we accept the quarterly financial report and that we adjust the mid-year budget to devote $5,000 to the finance department position, $15,000 to the speed flashing lights, $35,000 to the Pine Grove Square consultant, $50,000 to the streets reserve, and the balance to the general fund reserves account.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just want to check. Would there be a different motion available if this one were to succeed? I just want to check with Councilmember Jay, who did express an interest in the motion.
I was going to motion just the first three items, and maybe make one more topic point, the economic development coordinator. I think the economy is doing well, which is a great time to bring this position on. I think in addition that bringing that person on with the Pine Grove member will create an acceleration of that role onboarding and engaging. I think there's a significant amount of loss to have one come on and do a little piece of work and then disappear, and then have a new person come on, versus if they both came on at the same time, there's a lot that they would offer each other and a lot of benefit we would see. I see the money here, and I believe in economic development, and I believe that we need to work on our special business district, and that was the primary reason for the economic development coordinator position, and then having that advocate out there working side by side for those needs with Pine Grove and an overall economic development solution, that this is the right time for that position. So for me, I was going to offer the three first items, the 5K, 15K, and 35K, and then leave open for discussion that second half, because I still believe that there is a value in us bringing on that position.
Okay, well, that's a good discussion point for this motion. Any other comments?
Well, I'm thinking, I certainly am in agreement that we need economic development and that we need somebody directing it. But I'm thinking that if we're starting with our Pine Grove person, that we could bring on the economic development person after they have started and have them overlap, starting with the next fiscal year. And they would still be overlapping and get the interface with each other.
If we fund this in June, it likely wouldn't start until September, October. It seems to be our process of the city that it takes 3-4 months to bring somebody on. So my concern is if we did fund that in June, then that person actually would come on late after the Pine Grove role is complete. So that's and even if we funded it now, we're saying $30,000 for a half a year, but really it would take them 3 or 4 months to hire, so it's really like $8,000 to $10,000 out of this year's budget. But it will still affect next year's budget for a full salary, so you have to remember that.
Right, but what we'd also be doing is committing money to a job we don't even have a description for yet. So there's quite a lot of workup before we can get to the point where we know who it is exactly we're hiring. I think that item's come to the council maybe even twice already. I'll check with the city manager. Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, thank you,
May-
along your lines.
Okay,
May I ask for clarification
yes.
on the $15,000 sign that will come out of the general fund instead of traffic impact fee fund?
That is a good
Come on, traffic
question,
impact.
because I think we want it on a traffic impact,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
I think, I'm sorry, right,
Yes. Thank you for asking us.
right, okay.
So doesn't that in essence give you another
15,000
$15,000
more?
in the
Yes.
general fund? If you were working your way down from 118, which included that in the countdown, now it's no longer in that countdown because it's from another source.
Right. So now we have more money we can put in the general fund reserve. So, let me double check with the maker of the motion.
I would like to amend my motion to have the $15,000 for the traffic digital signs come out of the traffic impact fee fund, and I would also like to devote see, where were we? 28?
28,175 to be exact.
That balance to the Economic Development Service position, with the expectation that there is some ramp-up time on that.
Okay, so we're gonna have to have that motion restated with the amendment, and then I think, who was the second?
I was the second, but I'd like to hear the whole.
Yeah, the whole motion, because I'm lost in the numbers, how we got to the 20.
Yeah.
I actually have another point about the loss in the numbers.
I withdraw.
Okay.
So there's we've talked about the $5,000 towards the additional finance person, but we didn't talk about it coming out, the remainder of that money coming out of the other funds. Right? You're not,
Right, which is the water and sewer fund.
right. So shouldn't that be part of the motion? I mean, because we've only been talking about general fund money, we should have the 5,000 plus the remaining,
So the motion should be that the 20,150 will be added to the finance department, with a portion of $5,000 will be out of general fund, and the balance will be in the enterprise fund.
absolutely, that was my point.
Okay, so we do need this motion restated from the top, okay? Let's see,
So-
Mary, do you have it?
The amended motion,
Right. The amended motion is 5,000.
$5,000 for the finance staff. So with, hang on.
That's
a microphone, please.
Okay, Councilmember Slater moved that $20,150 will be added to the finance department, with $5,000 of that coming out of the general fund and the balance out of its enterprise funds, the remaining balance out of the enterprise funds. $15,000 for the traffic flashing signal lights will be out of the traffic impact fee fund. $35,000 will be for the Pine Grove consultant. $50,000 will be transferred for the street reserves. And the remaining balance of $28,175 to be for the economic development position.
Is that correct?
That is.
The current motion,
That is correct, with one more amendment, that the balance of the finance department position be allocated to the enterprise funds, the water and sewer funds.
she said that.
Right, which the city clerk did
Okay.
say. Yes.
Okay,
Just want to make sure.
okay, so we have no, oh, is there a second? You want someone second it?
I'm gonna withdraw my second.
Okay, who would like to second this motion? By the vice mayor? All right, so discussion, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Now we're putting no money to the general reserve because we've taken from the traffic impact fee, and now we're funding the economic development specialist position that we really don't know what it is. No money to the general reserve. I liked your first motion better. This is my point of view. I have a hard time committing money to a position that we don't know. I think it would be more responsible of us to agendize that discussion and dial in on what the work is gonna be, the process for hiring, what the potential salary range is, then we fund it with this next budget. We'll have somebody who's online, hopefully with Pine Grove Square for, say, 3 or 4 months, and they'll overlap or not overlap. But I would like to put the money into the general reserve, the extra. Just my point of view.
Until it's funded, the staff won't do that work. So we've been waiting to fund this for almost 2 years, for 2 years now.
Until what's funded?
Well, until we fund the position and the staff knows there's money for a position, they're not going to create job descriptions.
That's not true. We can agendize a discussion of the job description. We've had it on before.
All I saw was a letter from the subcommittee regarding Pine Grove. I don't see a job description or a work plan or any of those items that you're requesting for the economic development position.
There's substantially different services. You're talking about